everyone, this is Crystal here for Eating Disorder Hope, and we're so excited that you could join us tonight for our Google Hangout with our special guest, Sarah, who is the Director of BodyMatters out of Australia. So welcome, Sarah. We know it's been tricky coordinating the time difference because it's Friday morning for you and Thursday evening for us, but we're so happy that you could take the time to join us tonight. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So to get started, we would just love to learn more about you and your organization that you founded, BodyMatters out of Australia. So if you could just tell us a little bit about that to begin with.
Absolutely. So my name's Sarah McMahon. I'm a psychologist, and I've been working in the field for probably about 10 years as a psychologist. And I went into psychology with the hope of working within the field of eating disorders. I had experiences as a teenager myself, which gave me exposure to eating disorders. And I think then, and unfortunately now as well, it doesn't take long to realise that eating disorders are grossly under-resourced and underfunded. And so it's an area that I particularly had wanted to work in and make a difference in. I worked really hard to get to a position where I was able to do that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. So now I guess I'm the founder of BodyMatters with one of my colleagues, Lydia. At the time, we were spending a lot of energy raising awareness about eating disorders, presenting in different forums, so schools, universities, educating people in the community, and we decided that it was because we were spending so much time doing this on a voluntary basis that we really wanted to be in a position to be doing it on a full-time basis. And so hence we founded BodyMatters. And initially we had huge dreams, and I think we still have huge dreams, except for the fact that over the course of time we've been able to, I guess, crystallize what is more realistic for us to do. And so we still do things in the educational space and in the advocacy space, but most of the work that we do now at BodyMatters is within the treatment space. We're a private practice that specialises in treating eating disorders, and one of the things I'm really thrilled about is the fact that we have a good, strong team of different professionals, mostly psychologists, one dietitian, but within the area of eating disorders and disordered eating that have specific interest areas. So eating disorders and sport, eating disorders and young people. So it's a really highly specialised service that we offer.
That's so wonderful. And, we are just so excited to be collaborating with BodyMatters on an international level, because we definitely understand that eating disorders impacts people across the globe, like you kind of mentioned. So BodyMatters, you are doing things on two fronts, on the advocacy and education level, but then also with treating patients.
Yes, absolutely. It sort of seemed to me, I think one of the things when we live in a culture that glorifies thinness and is so confused about health, that it seemed almost hypocritical of me to be working as a therapist and helping people challenge their belief systems. But then what I was finding is that people would make huge progress in recovery, but the toxic messages of the world would continue to inhibit people's progress. And so I really believe that as a therapist, it's important to take a stand and say say what I believe in terms of what is right and what's not right in our society, particularly around messages to do with health, particularly to do with the way women are promoted or I guess objectified really in the media. And so that's a lot of where the advocacy work that I do is focused.
And it's just so incredible that you founded an organization that is not just helping people, but really breaking so many stigmas. And I think that's so needed. And, we kind of see things on our front, how they progress here in the States. But in Australia, what do you think are some of the unique struggles that individuals with eating disorders face, kind of unique to your country?
Yeah, I think in terms of in terms of people who are actually diagnosed with eating disorders, we have huge limitations in terms of accessing treatment. Treatment is very city-centric in Australia, and we have a large regional population. So yes, a lot of our population is based in capital cities, but a lot of the population also isn't. And so for people to have to drive, 4 or 5 hours, even at BodyMatters, we have some. So in Australia, we have a number of different states and territories, and we have some states and territories that actually have no specialised eating disorder services. So we have a place like Darwin, which is the northwestern part of Australia. Sydney's the sort of on the southeastern border, so people will fly several hours and to come to BodyMatters for an appointment. We've had people coming from, people travelling over 6 hours just to come for one appointment, and that's each way. So we do offer Skype appointments, and we try to navigate the tyranny of distance as much as we possibly can. I think nothing beats face-to-face treatment, but for so many people, that's just not actually an option. And I think that's a really difficult issue for people who require hospitalisation and more intensive forms of treatment, because there's no opportunity to step up from an outpatient sort of treatment basis to a day program or an inpatient hospitalisation without a significant upheaval to that person's life. That means that their family might need to relocate temporarily. And often for people, it means that they've unable to be successfully contained by their local treatment team, and they've sort of had to step up to more and more specialised services that are further and further away, so that once they're discharged from hospital, that they might be back in the same environment that was not able to contain or support them initially. So I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that we face in Australia, and I'm sure that other countries face similar issues, but Australia, I guess, being so vast in size, means that there perhaps is an extra bit of challenge in that regard.
Sure, absolutely, and that's definitely understandable. And I think that's hopefully something you'll see from your own advocacy work, is a greater awareness of more need for treatment and resource options for people who are struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Another issue that we struggle with in Australia is, I think everywhere as well has sort of funding limitations. It's one of the great things for us is our national charity, which is called the Butterfly Foundation. Over the past 5 years has become increasingly successful in lobbying for funds and positioning eating disorders as a real and genuine mental health issue. Previously in Australia, and I'm sure in the rest of the world, eating disorders have been trivialised, they're glamorised in the media, and generally speaking, education about eating disorders is really limited, and that impacts on people's ability to access treatment and support, and people's prognosis as well. So that's a fantastic thing that we've seen with the Butterfly Foundation becoming more successful with funding, and therefore more influential in terms of their capacity to make change.
Sure. And thanks so much for sharing that, Sarah. It's so great to hear that insight. And, that's amazing that your organization is serving such a need in your country. For other people, what are some of the other resources available for eating disorder sufferers in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Butterfly Foundation, their national charity, is really the best place to start. They have a teleweb service, so telephone and web-based counselling, web chat service, and they're not open 24 hours, but they do a really good job in terms of, I guess they do still provide some after hours support. And so that's probably the best place to start in terms of accessing support and sort of knowing where to from there. Well, we would always be recommending that people, when they, I guess if anyone has concerns that a loved one might have an eating issue, or if someone's contacting or reaching out because they are concerned that they have an eating issue, that they ideally set up a team of people around them to support them. So we would always be recommending that a GP that has specialisation or at least an interest area in eating disorders is involved from the beginning, and that a referral to a specialised provider of treatment takes place as well. And the Butterfly Foundation also provides a great database of professionals that specialise in providing treatment.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those resources. And, you know, as a clinician who's been specializing in this area for quite some time now, what do you see as some of the collaborative efforts that can be made between Australia and the United States when it comes to progress with research, advocacy, treatment, things like that?
I think that I think one of the great things is that we are being able to see more collaboration take place in terms of advocacy. Recently with the International Eating Disorders Day, I forget the exact name of the day, but I think that there's, in the last few years, we're seeing more and more collaboration. There's a collaboration with Endangered Bodies to have fat as an emoticon removed from Facebook, and that was an international campaign. There was Brave Girls Alliance, and they're working in Times Square. That must have been a couple of years ago now. So I think that we're seeing more and more international efforts, and I think that's not only fantastic in terms of the impact of advocacy, but I think for those of us that are involved in advocacy, that there's a lot of, I guess there's a great deal of empowerment that comes from working together and having a collective voice to make change. I think Australia is still a long way behind America in terms of treatment. We really have very limited treatment options in Australia. So maybe each capital city might have maybe at most probably 2 to 3 specialised treatment hospital services, and that would be in really only two states. So there would be less than 10 specialised treatment hospitals in Australia for eating disorders, and that there would be, I think, around Australia, in terms of public hospital beds for adults. So in Australia, we have a different health system from America, a public hospital and a private system that's a lot easier to access, I think, if you don't have health insurance than the American system. But public hospital beds in New South Wales, there's really just, I'd be guessing the exact numbers, but it's certainly around the whole of Australia, there's probably no more than about 30 adult hospital beds for the entire country. So it's really poorly resourced. And I think in the US, it seems that there's a lot more progression in terms of, for example, previous consumers or people who've experienced eating disorders being maybe taken more seriously than in Australia. I think that if you were to put up your hand in Australia and say that you've recovered from an eating disorder and were involved in treatment for eating issues, that would be, generally speaking, is fairly poorly received, at least in professional circles. I'm not sure, you might be able to comment on that in America, if there's a division there, if it's kind of well respected. But yeah, I think that there's the Butterfly Foundation recently has developed an extension of the Montenegro program in Australia. It's just a very limited service that's offered a couple of evenings a week in Sydney. But the ability for clinicians who are previous consumers of eating disorders treatment really sort of struggled to be able to speak about their experiences.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I think, it's interesting because we do have different healthcare systems. And, for example, here in the States, I think there are more options for treatment. We have a lot of residential and inpatient, outpatient facilities kind of widespread, but I think it's harder for people to access them in terms of getting the healthcare coverage they need and the financial part taken care of. So, you know, there's definitely struggles on both ends. And
Yeah.
I think there's things we could probably both be learning from each other as we move forward to help the eating disorder sufferer, you know.
Definitely. I think in Australia, we have the public health system, the hospital beds is more limited. So the more, I guess, support for people who are perhaps more chronically unwell or require hospitalisation, that whilst that isn't there, that there's perhaps access to, say, see a psychologist or a dietitian is covered under our Medicare system to a large extent, so people will get a rebate. So it's quite affordable usually for people to have at least 6 to 10 sessions initially. So in terms of that early intervention space, there's probably there is support there if people understand. And I guess this is where advocacy and education is important, because it's trying to get people into the right service as quickly as possible. We know that it's a slippery slope with weight loss, and regardless of diagnosis, as time progresses, people typically become more and more unwell.
Exactly.
I think one of the saddest things with the work that I do at Body Matters is the number of clients that we have who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, who've had disordered eating for 20 plus years and have never had the opportunity to access treatment before, and perhaps have asked for help when they were much younger, and because of poor mental health literacy, have been turned away from treatment, or had not had the opportunity when there may have been an opportunity to pursue it in the past.
That is so heartbreaking. And just out of curiosity, have you ever had to refer a client or a patient like outside Australia for treatment? And do you
absolutely. Yeah, so I guess often because we offer Skype treatment at Body Matters,
right.
Often when we've had clients relocate, they've usually chosen to continue with their therapist over Skype. So that's been one good thing that we've been able to do. And I guess Australia is the hub of the Asia Pacific region in many respects. And so it's also not uncommon for us to have inquiries from people in Pacific Islands, not uncommon, but we've treated people from Pacific Islands and different parts of Asia who haven't been able to access treatment from where they were located. So I guess that's people coming from the outside with more limited resources to us in terms of people relocating, and people from America often, like I guess we've had a few clients who've been on working holidays or student visas, those sorts of things. So at Body Matters, one of the things that we do is we offer low cost counselling, just because I think I really strongly believe that people shouldn't be excluded from treatment based on finances. The Body Matters, the structure has been that we have intern psychologists who provide that lower cost treatment for people. So that's how we support people who are coming into Australia on, say, a student visa or a working holiday.
Sure.
We do have people that leave Australia as well, who, if they haven't engaged with us, that we might be referring to other people as well. So, yeah, that does happen from time to time too. And I guess it depends on somebody's stage of recovery. If someone is well and truly on top of their eating disorders and has engaged with a therapist, that's when we'd be looking at continuing that relationship and giving them that choice. If someone, for example, goes on exchange, or they're still not, they're still in the early stages of treatment, we'd absolutely be recommending that they set up a treatment team that specialised in eating disorders around them for that location.
Sure. And thank you for sharing all that. It's just so incredible and inspiring to hear of all the things that you are doing through Body Matters, and we just really commend you for that.
Thank you.
And that kind of leads me to my last question is, what encouragement might you offer to someone who's watching who might be dealing with an eating disorder today? Particularly in Australia, someone who might be afraid to reach out or just feel like they don't really have the resources to connect for help.
Yeah, so the first thing is recovery is absolutely possible. I think that there's still a lot of people that believe that it's not, or that you can only become, recovered to a certain extent, and that you live with an eating disorder for the rest of your life. And that's not something I subscribe to at all, or not something that we subscribe to at Body Matters in any way. Recovery can be a long, hard process and a difficult journey, but I don't know anyone that's made a complete recovery that has never has wished that they'd stayed unwell.
Sure.
The second thing is that I wanted to say here is that I think I guess this ties into something I was saying before about how sad it is to have clients who have been unwell for so many years and only just now having the opportunity to access treatment. I think there's so much tragedy in that circumstance, and I think one of the good things, the flip side of that, is that treatment is definitely evolving in Australia. So when I look at the early cases of eating disorders and the initial treatment that was prescribed, those very first cases, was removal from the family, rest and refeeding. Sometimes I think to myself, how far have we really come? But I do think we've come a long way in the sense of the attitudes of clinicians. And I think one of the things that really excites me in Australia is that there's perhaps more, within an evidence-based framework, there's perhaps more and more removal away from eating disorders being seen and treated in a really clinical way, that I think that treatment's becoming more and more compassionate. There's a lot of younger therapists that I know of and that I work with, many may have had personal experiences of eating disorders as well, and I think that that means that there's more diversity in treatment options for people, so that if someone has tried a more clinical approach in the past, that they might be able to find a therapist that's still using evidence-based treatment, but perhaps is more compassionate or more, what's the word, maybe easier for them to relate to than things that they may have tried in the past. Yeah. And
Sorry.
and
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to say is that I think that eating disorders now, thanks to the great work of the Butterfly Foundation that I was talking about before, is really beginning to be seen as a public health issue in Australia, and that's also extremely exciting. It will mean hopefully more funding, increased access to treatment, more public awareness, which will help with early intervention. So I think there'll be a ripple effect as eating disorders continue to be seen as a public health issue.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing all of this great insight. And it's just so interesting to hear your perspective as a clinician practicing in Australia. And we're so excited to continue partnering with you and supporting your work however we can here at Eating Disorder Hope. So keep up the great work. You're doing an amazing job. Fantastic.
And I'm also just thrilled to have the opportunity to partner with you guys in the various things that we're doing at the moment. And I have no doubt that it's going to continue to lead to great things together.
Absolutely. And before we let you go, Sarah, can you just share with our viewers where we could find out more about Body Matters and about the services that you offer?
Absolutely. So the best place to find out more about Body Matters is probably through our webpage, which is www.bodymatters.com.au. And we've got a whole heap of information. We've got blogs that are uploaded, usually a couple of blogs a week. And we've got a really good resource page with lots of useful resources for sufferers and people in recovery, as well as family members, friends, and people who are trying to support their loved ones.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been such an honor to have you with us. And again, thank you for the work that you're doing through Body Matters. And we look forward to sharing your content too through our social media platforms. So for our viewers who are watching and interested in reading one of your fantastic blogs, definitely look for it on the Eating Disorder Hope channels through social media. So keep sending those our way, Sarah.
Fantastic. Thank you. We will.
Thank you again to our viewers who are watching our Google Hangout tonight and for joining us with our special guest, Sarah, Director of BodyMatters in Australia. And for more resources for eating disorders, feel free to check out our website at eatingdisorderhope.com. We also have a schedule of our upcoming Google Hangouts on there as well that we hope you'll join us for. So thank you again, Sarah. We'll be talking soon, hopefully. And to everyone else who's watching, have a good night or good day if you're in Australia. All right, bye, Sarah.
Bye. Bye.